Brought to you by Stout Bar and Grill in Oakland Park. With over 40 TVs, Stout is the home for soccer around the world. Stout Bar features Clonakilty whiskeys, the world's best Irish whiskey.
When you need your warehouse looking good while staying efficient, there's only one place to find the finest racks in the business. Pallet Rack City in Hialeah. 305-424-8547. That's 305-424-8547. Pallet Rack City is the company you need when you want your warehouse sporting the finest racks in the business. After all, who doesn't love a great rack? Pallet Rack City. 305-424-8547. That's 305-424-8547. OnSideRadio.com knows gamers need a home.
Can you dig it?
That's why for the next 60 seconds,
Can you count, suckers?
here's your On-Side Radio E-Report with Michael Christian.
Updates on games like FIFA and Madden probably won't be coming until late July. So EA Play Live, which is a big announcement series, a big digital series for EA, is scheduled for July 22nd. That is a little over a month after E3. And if you don't know what E3 is a huge gaming convention. They use it for a lot of gaming announcements, a lot of updates on things. Throughout the years, E3 has been the place to be when it comes to announcing the latest installment of your games or anything like that. And it looks like EA is deciding to skip that entirely. So any updates that you're looking for FIFA, Madden, Skate 4, anything like that, July 22nd seems to be your date.
Stay in touch in the world of gaming with the On-Side Radio E-Report.
The viewpoints, statements, or beliefs expressed on the following program by the host, guests, or callers are not necessarily the opinions of On-Side Radio ownership, management, sponsors, websites, or Inner Miami Marketing, LLC.
It's time to rack it up. Oh my God! Here's Ira Winderman and Ethan Skolnick with the Pallet Rack City Inside the Paint program. Inside the Paint is brought to you by Pallet Rack City. 305-424-8547. Pallet Rack City is the company you need when you want your warehouse sporting the finest racks in the business. After all, who doesn't love a great rack? Yeah, hell yes! Here's Ira Winderman and Ethan Skolnick with the Pallet Rack City Inside the Paint show.
Welcome in Inside the Paint here on OnSideRadio.com. We're here every single Monday from 10 to 11. Yes, even on the holidays. I'm Ethan Skolnick. We've got Ira Winderman. You can follow him at Ira Heatbeat.
I might have to run out early because I got my flight to Milwaukee for Game 5.
You
so
do.
We'll see how that plays out.
Did they give you the money back for that one?
Yeah, it's just not expected here.
Yeah, not expected. All right, so we got Ira, we got me. We're going to be here until 11 o'clock. The Miami Heat season, of course, is over. You all saw it. Well, we hope you didn't really stay till the end of it. The Heat gets swept in the first round by Milwaukee. We talked a lot about kind of what this season was and whether they would actually ever get it together. There were like some moments at the end of the regular season where it looked like, okay, maybe, but I don't think either you or I were convinced that this was going to have a positive ending. I don't think that we thought it would have as bad an ending as it had. But for me, Ira, this reminded me of a couple of other Heat seasons for different reasons. 2007 season we talked about, that team came off a championship. This didn't, but went to the finals. A lot of the same players brought back, couldn't sort of recapture that same energy. They had some injuries that season. They get swept off their home floor by Luol Deng and the Bulls. This second straight year they played that team, by the way.
Yes.
Second straight time they played this team. This is a better team than that Chicago team, of course, but this wasn't a championship team for Miami. But also other seasons where they sort of ran it back. And what we've seen, I think, over the course of Heat history is when they run it back, it doesn't always run as smoothly as it did the season before.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with, over-reliance on complementary players taking steps forward and not recognizing them for who they are. And as we dissect and go through coming weeks about the Heat, there's this change in Pat Riley that's been pronounced from when he got here to this point, where before he was the cutthroat, if you're not getting it done, you're gone. This is a guy who traded Tim Hardaway.
Yeah.
This is a guy who did not bring back Alonzo Mourning after Alonzo came back from kidney illness. That was more Michael Douglas, Wall Street, Pat Riley. It was just, you need to get the profit and move forward. In the last decade, 15 years or so, there's been a kinder, gentler, hopefully as we all get older, kind of Pat Riley, where he's maybe held on too long and been too loyal And I know we'll get to this at some point because we're going to talk about individuals, but even as recently as this trading deadline, couldn't let go of Tyler Hero, couldn't let go of Duncan Robinson because he valued them so much. The real lesson here is there are your mainstays and there are the other guys. And the other guys are welcome to ride along. We'll give them half-price admission on the, on the roller coaster, and they can enjoy it. But they're still ancillary parts. And if you look at what the Milwaukee Bucks did after they lost to the Heat, they said, we are committed to Brook Lopez. We are committed to Giannis Antetokounmpo. We are committed to Chris Middleton. That's it.
Yep.
Anyone else, you can go. Marvin Williams, you might as well retire because we've moved on. And they swapped out the other parts. And I think a reluctance by Pat to do that because of loyalty, I think sort of got them burned. So I'm not going to sit here, although I will maybe in coming weeks, and say how they need to restructure the front office or change the thinking. But I think they got burned by that. And I think the thing is in today's NBA, and you see it in a bunch of teams, even saw the Lakers do it a bit in the offseason, is you have to evolve even when you're succeeding. I think the Heat maybe get too caught in the Heat loyalty, Heat culture sort of rut, and I think it hurt them this season.
Well, and I think a lot of the loyalty stuff we've talked about, it goes back to 2016 and
17, right?
And
Those
17,
two
and
yes.
right, those two off seasons, and I think Pat was scarred by that, and I think his decisions since have kind of followed from that. I guess the question becomes how much they really could have done during the season, because there still is the misconception, that they could have had Harden if they gave up Hero and Robinson, which isn't true.
But again, or they could have further sweetened that. And I know they didn't have the draft capital that the Nets offered, and I understand that. They got creative with the draft pick with Houston in the Victor Oladipo deal, so there were things that could be done. Again, you know this because you're involved in the stock market and maybe even now in cryptocurrency, and it's sort of you want to buy low and sell high,
Right.
And I think what happened, there was a value for Precious Achiuwa this season. There was a higher value for Tyler Hero this season. There were things that could have been done, and I think right now when you look at the value, this is when you're sort of stuck. How can there be a value for a Precious Achiuwa when he only plays when you're down 20,
right.
And is coming in with Max Strus and Gabe Vincent? So I think they have depreciated some of their assets as well.
They've pretty much depreciated every asset on the roster, right? Is there one asset that appreciated during this? I mean, even Duncan Robinson, who I thought was the one who might have, didn't contribute very much in the Milwaukee series after Game 1, right? Did anybody? Hero didn't, as you mentioned. Precious didn't. Kendrick Nunn may have appreciated himself out of where they want to pay him, but not as an asset.
And Dwayne Dedmon appreciated himself out of a minimum contract for next season, so you have that. I know he's not an asset, but I really think, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, at some point, Bam Adebayo had an appreciable season, except for what happened in the playoffs, which I think was more schematic and not necessarily on him. I don't think he was helped out at all by the Heat approach, but I think Bam Adebayo made strides this season also. I think he had a very good regular season, comparable to his All-Star season, if not better. So I think there were gains made there also. But no, when you look at this roster, and you look at the way it played out, we even thought Goran Dragic might have made strides as a career reserve and had a pretty good season matching his All-Star season numbers. And then it sort of tapered off there. Yeah, this is the same thud that the thud came when the Heat eliminated teams last year.
Right.
That when they got done with the Pacers, Nate McMillan was out, and they realized they had to make changes. When they got done with the Bucks, they realized they had to make changes. They had to do better than Eric Bledsoe in their backcourt. When they got done with the Celtics realized we've got to get bigger. Daniel Tice is not our answer. And, right or wrong, the Tristan Thompson move, they made changes. Now the Heat is that team. Now we'll see if the Heat can make their changes. Some of the teams I mentioned, they made changes and stayed in neutral.
Right.
Some of the teams, Milwaukee, one of the teams, they made changes and they took a step forward. So it'll be interesting to see when the Heat is now that team, what they do.
You mentioned Bam. Let's start with their top two players, because ultimately, if you're going to win a championship, it goes through your top two. Like you're saying, if you're not, if you're not relying on the role players, if the role players are somewhat interchangeable, then you're making a decision about your top two. These guys are good enough.
Everything is about complementing
them.
Yes.
But let me just ask you this, okay? After what we saw in the bubble, and then after what we saw, and I don't want to get into the whole bubble fraud thing because it's stupid, but after what we saw in the bubble, and then what we saw in this season, can you make a definitive argument that you can win big and potentially go back to another finals or at least a conference finals with those two guys as your 2 top players. Are you there?
You know what? I'm going to put you on the spot because I know I hate when people do radio interviews with me and they all of a sudden go, okay, your top 5 sitcoms of all time, and you're trying to figure. But I'm going to put you on the spot with this. Ethan, can you name another team whose 2 leading men does not feature at least one 3-point shooter?
Right.
And I know people come back to me and they go, what about the Sixers? Joel Embiid is the 3-point threat.
Right.
Joel Embiid changes game plans. And maybe he jacks them too often, but he can. So when you look at every other team, whatever 2-man group you want to use, even LeBron and Anthony Davis certainly the threat. I mean, we saw LeBron, win a play-in game with a 3-pointer there at the end. He's a threat. The spacing is so much more difficult when you have no 3-point shooter. Now, I wrote a column today at sunsentinel.com. It'll be in tomorrow's paper. And I asked this question. If Bam Adebayo were to dedicate himself to go to camp, to go to school for 2 months and work on one skill, would you prefer it be a definitive post move and go to Akeem Olajuwon kind of, schooling, go to whatever is the next version of the Pete Newell big man camp? Or would you prefer he become Chris Bosh?
It depends who he's playing with, right?
But if he's playing with Jimmy.
Okay, but it also depends who he's playing with in a front court. If he's playing with, is Bam going to be a 4 or is it going to be a 5?
Okay, well, that's the second point I raised in the column there.
Okay.
And again, I don't want to spar with Eric Spoelstra if he's available to talk to the media. The Heat are having their pack-it-up session today at 1 o'clock. Positionless is nice, and a lot of things in the NBA sort of run their course. Ethan, in Bam Adebayo's 3 years as a prime contributor, he has played alongside a bulkier big man in Myers Leonard and Kelly Olynyk, and honestly had some pretty good success if you run down those lineups and the 1-loss record. He's also played against more athletic or agile power players in Jay Crowder, highly successful. Trevor Ariza, somewhat successful. But I think at some point, I think the problem is he's being pulled in 2 directions. So you know how many times you'll talk about a guy will come in, we talked about this with Justice Winslow, whether he's a power forward, a small forward, a point guard, or a shooting guard.
Right.
And so remember Justice big muscle, bulky Winslow, who couldn't get past anyone because he was cast. Remember he was in the dunker spot and he was a power forward.
Right.
Then he became the point guard and he didn't necessarily have the quickness. I think Bam needs to be given a mandate. Work on your skills as a, fill in the blank here, Ethan.
4 or 5.
Center or as a power forward. But I think to put so much on his plate, Eric Spoelstra loves when he talks about Bam Adebayo saying how Bam eats it all up and you can't put too much on his plate. Well, he could be eager and he could make gains in all areas, guard positions 1 through 5. But are you letting him maximize his maximum specific strengths by taking that approach?
Well, and to a certain degree, and we'll talk about this guy later in the show, but to a certain degree, they made the same mistake with Hero. I mean, where they basically, okay, is he a point guard? Is he not a point guard? You're just throwing him in the starting lineup. He's going to handle the ball more.
Is he a starter? Is he
a backup?
And if you're a backup, you can be that ignitable player. Because if you're a Tyler Hero backup and you give me 25 in one game and 8 in another,
it's fine.
That's sort of what happens with the Lou Williams and going back to the Vinnie Johnsons.
It even
and
happens with
like
Jordan
that.
Clarkson, who just won the Sixth Man of the Year.
Those guys are, and that's fine. You don't need that consistency of locking in 15 points a game, 16 points in your starting lineup. So again, I love the maneuverability of the Heat, but one thing I saw more, maybe a little bit more in the Riley era, is a willingness to move on to the next thing. We saw Pat with Showtime in L.A. We saw Pat with Brutal Ball in New York, a little bit here. Then he moved away from that. Eric Spoelstra will tell you privately, and he's talked about this, he's stubborn.
Right.
And again, here's the thing, and this is where we're being a little bit two-faced here, Ethan. This team went to the NBA Finals last year.
Yeah, they did.
Now, you can say whether it was the bubble this or the bubble that, and one day, coming up in our coming weeks, we have a full-hour show here for Pallet Rock City and talk about this. You can talk about this being a fraud of a season also because of the COVID impact. This season was every bit as unusual in different ways as bubble season was.
Right.
Because bubble season, for the first 2/3 of the regular season, was typical season last year, right? Remember the Charlotte game, all of a sudden, Rudy Gobert touches things, you get angry at him, and we're done. But at least that was more typical. There was not a single typical moment of an NBA season at all in this season because it was up at 8 a.m., go for testing, stay away from your teammates, don't have meetings, don't have full practices. So this whole notion that I will harp on until this year's champion is crowned is this season was in a way fraudulent from typical as last season was.
No, you're right. about that because, again, at least last season, I think it was more so because last season, at least,
was
in
just
the bubble,
about basketball.
It was just about basketball, and everything we've discussed was just the same for everybody and everybody who was in the bubble. And this year, not only did you have that, but you also had some teams that were coming off of 2 months rest, and you had other teams that were coming off of 8 months rest. Right. Okay, so I mean that twisted it. I mean I think Atlanta's benefiting from that right now because they didn't play in the bubble last year. So I
New
do
York
think that
also
helps
the two teams that finished directly ahead of the Heat by 1 game,
right,
were the teams that we'll give them an extra 8 months off,
right?
And rest. I figured maybe I'm wrong. I don't know as much about basketball maybe as you do in this respect. But Ethan, would you agree that 8 months of extra rest might equal 1 game in the Stands?
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, right there.
I think either of us could probably assess that. All right, when we come back, the one thing we do want to get into a lot more is Jimmy. But let's just sort of touch on it here. Jimmy has pretty much done no wrong since he came to Miami. He's won over the fans. He has said all the right things. He has mostly, more than anything else, backed up his words. He did not back up his words in this series. You can't say you're stupidly locked in and then get outscored by Bryn Forbes. It's just, I mean, to a certain degree, it does. It is a little bit reminiscent of the 2011 thing with LeBron, where he was outplayed by people he shouldn't have been outplayed by. And when we come back, what I want to get into with you is why. Because I think, let's hold it, because I think there's a lot of speculation about
to fail.
Okay, well, we'll get into that. Okay, there's a lot of speculation about whether or not it was an issue internally or whether he's tired. I think I know where you're going. When we come back, we're going to break here a little early because I want to get to it, and I don't want to do too much of it on this side of it, Sean. When we come back on Inside the Paint on Pallet Rack City, we will get into the Jimmy question, not just what happened, but what happens now and what happens in the future, because a lot of money coming his way potentially.
You're listening to the Pallet Rack City Inside the Paint Show. For the best racks and warehouse supplies, call Eddie Pieta at 305-424-8547. That's 305-424-8547. Or visit them at 715 West 20th Street in Hialeah. Back with more Inside the Paint at OnSideRadio.com.
When you're looking for curtains and blinds to create a space of your own, look no further than Bandalux. Bandalux can tailor your space to your needs. Create the atmosphere and ambiance you desire. We invite you to discover it at Bandalux.com. Explore our new solar control systems, range of sustainable fabrics, and energy-efficient solutions that can improve your well-being and quality of life. Witness Bandalux Beauty. Go to Bandalux.com or follow them on Instagram at Bandalux_official. For a personal experience, a shade above window fashions in Davie and Sunrise is an official Bandalux partner.
When protecting your family is your priority, there's nothing more important than the roof above the people you love. At Onside Radio, we recommend Chase Roofing and Contracting. At chaseroofing.com, they care about the customer. Chase Roofing provides reliable roof installation and repair without the destruction to our environment. Chase Roofing is powered by Tamara, who is owner and operated for 18 years. Chaseroofing.com is Google top rated and a AAA standing with the Better Business Bureau. Open 24/7. Call them today. Trust chaseroofing.com to fortify and protect what's most important to you, your family.
If you're looking for a change from the everyday restaurant, then you need to get to Checkers Old Munchin German Restaurant in Pompano Beach. Brats, Wiener Schnitzel, homemade potato pancakes, pretzels with mustard, and lots of German beer. Take their famous Boot Tour Challenge, and there's now outdoor seating available in their new beer garden with live music. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram at Checkers Old Munchin Restaurant or call them for reservations or pickup at 954-785-7565. So get over to 2209 East Atlantic Boulevard in Pompano Beach to Zagat-rated Checkers Old Munchin German Restaurant.
Fish fans, time to reel in the latest news in baseball with OnSideRadio.com's Marlins Minute. Here's Alex Aguirre.
It was an incomplete weekend for the Miami Marlins as their third and final game of their weekend series against the Boston Red Sox was rained out. That game will be made up on Monday, June 7th to end their current road trip. In Saturday's game, the Fish dropped another close one in Fenway 3-1. Trevor Rogers started the game and had another quality start, going 6 innings and piling up the strikeouts with 9. After the start, Rogers has kept his ERA under 2 at 1.87. The Marlins offense has been struggling to put up runs over the last 2 weeks, barely averaging 3 runs a game, and they look to change that script as the team is traveling today to play the Toronto Blue Jays in their temporary home field in Buffalo for a quick 2-game series. Toronto has been struggling as of late, winning only 4 games over their last 12, so let's hope Miami can take advantage of that. The Marlins look to rebound from a tough start to the road trip with Sandy Alcantara on the mound tomorrow night for Miami. First pitch is at 7:10. Let's go Fish.
Keep up with the latest on the Miami Marlins by subscribing on most platforms by searching Onside Radio. Welcome back to Inside the Paint, brought to you by Pallet Rack City in Hialeah.
It's local.
It's local? For great racks and warehouse supplies. Call them at 305-424-8547. That's 305-424-8547. Back to Inside the Paint. Here's Ira Winderman and Ethan Skolnick.
Hooah!
All right, Ethan Skolnick back on Inside the Paint here on OnSideRadio.com. Here with Ira Winderman. We're here every Monday from 10 to 11. Sponsored by Pallet Rack City in Hialeah. Make sure you check them out. All right, let's get to the Jimmy question here. And you teased what your answer is. I asked, what happened? Because we're not used to Jimmy disappointing people. And the first game of the series, he was incredibly inefficient, but at least he was pressing the issue.
He made the play of the game.
He made the play of the game.
Play that your max player makes. You were down 2, regulation is ending, ball in your hands, go get it. He got it.
But then game 2, he only takes 10 shots, right? And then game 3, non-factor for the most part. And then game 4, he has a triple-double, but you never really felt his impact on the game.
No, that was and Bam's had some hollow triple-doubles. Bam in this series had some statistical games that were fine, but weren't really there. So the numbers, I don't think, told the story about the individual performances. But Ethan, and this is something, again, you and I were talking about the counters to last season, how the Heat are now in the role of the other teams. Mike Budenholzer was destroyed for his lack of adjustments last season against the Heat in the Bucks losing 4-1 in the second round to the Heat. How he never countered what Eric Spoelstra did. Did the Heat change? Again, I know. I'm not paying as close attention as some.
Game 4, there were some changes. They went more zone.
Defensively,
okay. They went earlier in the shot clock on offense. Those were the 2 things that I noticed primarily. Things that I think people had talked about maybe doing earlier in the series. But the long answer is, or the short answer is no.
And, I mean, whether it was something as simple as making Bam the primary ball handler so one, Drew Holiday couldn't deny the passes, or Brook Lopez would have to come farther out. Maybe he wouldn't have, but then the Heat would have been able to get into offense easier versus Drew Holiday dogging the ball in the first place. But as long as there was going to be a goaltender in this series, Jimmy Butler things were very hard for Jimmy Butler to do. And there was no adjustment away from that. And that every time that Jimmy Butler went there, Brook Lopez was there. Bam offered him no relief. There had to be something, whether it was sealing off Brook Lopez in the paint. So I don't think they helped Jimmy Butler in this series. Now, I know you might tell me, hey, Ira, I don't want to hear that. LeBron has had bad coaches elsewhere in other places and found a way to win anyway. You could overcome that. I agree with that. But I don't think he was given any help in this series. Duncan Robinson wasn't making threes. Tyler Tuesday, there was no Tuesday game, so there was no contribution there. Goran Dragic wasn't the same as playoff Goran. And again, I'm always very honest about this. A player might get, and we'll talk about this, a max contract or max extension. That is a function of economics.
Right.
A max contract in the NBA, and it's stupid they have max contracts for this reason, is a matter more of economics than your actual worth.
And pride, right.
I don't think Jimmy Butler is a superstar. I think Jimmy Butler is a star. I have not seen, maybe you have, any of these NBA ranking lists that ever have Jimmy in the top 10.
No.
He's not. Well, if you don't have a top 10 talent, you need more around him. That's what Jimmy is. Jimmy's salary is a function of economics. It's a function of the Heat's desperation to get anything in free agent that offseason. He got the maximum. His max extension coming up now is a function of ain't no other way for them to get a superstar or a star player. So you have to offer the money because, and we'll talk about this either this segment or down the road, an unhappy Jimmy Butler is one of the scariest things in all of the 4 major North American sports leagues. So I think Jimmy, Eric Spoelstra said this twice, at least in the series, after games. He says, I didn't do a good enough job of freeing up Jimmy to get where he needed to go. Well, he should have. And that's
okay. So before we get into the Jimmy Max extension conversation and kind of where this goes, why do you think Eric had such a down season? Because I think you and I both agree that he had a down season. We did a whole episode ranking his seasons, and we pretty much said the playoffs would tell, or that last stretch of the season, other than the 2 wins against a battered Boston team and a so-so Charlotte team, they didn't really accomplish a whole lot, towards the end of this thing. They rang up some wins against some bad teams that they should have beaten, and then they get swept out of the playoffs by Milwaukee. We're talking about no adjustments. I mean, I think both you and I believe in Erik Spoelstra. I don't think Erik Spoelstra is getting fired. I don't think he should get fired, but I can tell you that other coaches, I mean, you mentioned Indiana last year. Nate McMillan lost his job for getting swept out by the Heat. It happens. It's not going to be considered here, but what do you think happened this season with him?
First I want to go to a pre-thought before I offer my thoughts on Eric, and that's this. I think any team that fired a coach in either of the last 2 years is a chicken crap organization, because these weren't normal conditions.
Right.
You put your coaches in conditions that were largely untenable, said do your best job, survive, let us maintain our revenue stream.
Mm-hmm.
So when I see some of these dismissals on these teams, I'm like, what are you thinking? What could they have done? Okay, but let's sort of transfer that into Eric's situation. The Miami Heat's culture and situation is built on extensive training, extensive conditioning, extensive court work, extensive practice, extensive video sessions and shoot-arounds. It wasn't available. So what you did this season, Ethan, is you took away Heat tools. Now, other laissez-faire, craptastic teams never had that in the first place.
Right.
That's why they're the Sacramento Kings.
Right.
The Heat had their system. The Heat's system and ideology could not be put in place this season because of COVID restrictions, including at one point, you couldn't be face-to-face with your team for more than 15 consecutive minutes. So how do you drive home a record, a thought of culture in that time? So that's number one. The Heat system was put on hiatus for this season. It was the opposite of the bubble, when there was nothing but practice time and court time and video time, because you couldn't do anything else except ride a bicycle in a quarter-mile circle. So you had that going on. Number two, I think there was a mental exhaustion for Erik Spoelstra. We've all been through it. You with still the young child, your daughter.
Yeah.
I think having 2 young children at home, having this kind of season, having been in a bubble for 4 months and all this, just takes a toll. I don't think you're the same person, and I think that does bleed into your work. All of our personal lives bleed into our work. Number two. Number three, and I think you know where I'm going with this because you've mentioned this before. There has never been more of a time when you needed someone to lean on.
Yeah.
A veteran assistant, a veteran boss, or a long-time trusted ally. He had that in Dan Craig. But Dan Craig started looking around and realized that Chris Quinn had sort of morphed into the lead assistant. That what Dan Craig had gotten credit for and done before, maybe we've all gone through this in jobs, maybe moved to other jobs. You don't feel as appreciated. You go elsewhere. Dan Craig left. I think Erik Spoelstra had to spend this season also mentoring Chris Quinn as a first-time lead assistant, Caron Butler as a first-time assistant or a coach on any level, and Malik Allen just in his second year of adjusting to the Heat. So I think all three of those things really worked against him. Erik Spoelstra didn't have a good season, but I would put it this way with a little asterisk. Did not have a good season with cause.
Okay, so looking forward then. We've always sort of had this conversation, and we'll cycle back to Jimmy, and I guess we'll do more of it in the next segment as well. But we've always had this conversation about Eric and how long you do this. I mean, he is a lifer, to the max. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's been with the organization since 95.
Quarter century, right? Yeah.
Right. Okay. Spent all that time in the video room. He's been on the road since 2008. Okay, as the head coach,
and on the road
prior
as a scout,
to that,
as
a
scout,
scout
right.
and as assistant, as you mentioned, young family, with 2 kids now, and we don't know when Pat's leaving or if he's ever leaving. But how much longer do we really expect?
Well, I think this extensive break will be cathartic for him, and I think he could really. I think with 4 months of break, I know there's summer league in August, but really until they reconvene in September, he'll finally have the exhale he hasn't had for 2 years, and I think that'll be important to him, and I think that can be rejuvenating. So I'm not so sure that the change comes now, and it's interesting because I'm not so sure. This is the first time it's been this case in a while, Ethan. There is a pipeline successor.
Yeah.
In other words, you could have said Dan Craig was the pipeline successor. He
Or
put in his
Juwan.
time, right? He put in his time with the Skyforce. You could have said Juwan Howard just because of his playing time, almost in a Steve Nash, Jason Kidd kind of. He's ready. He's seen it all. He's done it all. You could have said it with David Fizdale before he realized he had to leave to get his head coaching start, first with the Memphis Grizzlies, then with the New York Knicks. I don't see anyone on the staff right now that you could say Chris Quinn is ready to step in and continue the culture. Now, of course, we also said that when Eric Spoelstra took over for Pat Riley, but at least he still was ingrained probably then for 10, 12, 13 years, like you pointed out. So I don't think this is the transitory time. And here's the other thing. And obviously, we keep pushing the Jimmy Butler segment back, which is probably good radio, but also, do you dare put anyone else in a position of coaching cantankerous Jimmy Butler after cantankerous Jimmy Butler was eliminated in the first round?
No, and I don't think that they do it. In other words, I don't think it comes from the organization. I'm just wondering from Eric's perspective. I mean, you make a good point that he's going to have more time off now than he's had in a very long time, and that should rejuvenate him in some way. But, I mean, at a certain point, I mean, that job is, I mean, there's a reason he's the second longest tenured coach with his team in the whole NBA. I mean, some of it is guys get fired, and some of it is guys just burn out. And he seemed to me this year, and it's hard because you and I have talked about this many times before, and during the playoff series, it really hit me. Us not being in the locker room, not being able to have the side conversations with Spoelstra or with the coaches or the players. Right, because they give you, and I mean, on Zooms, it's like, and I know you're on them, I might have my guys on. One of the reasons I stopped participating in some of them is because, again, it's just, what are you going to get?
It's impersonal. That's what
It's one question, maybe two questions, and you're out. And it's not their fault. It's just the nature of the circumstances.
And to take people inside how the sausage is made, one of the most important times we have is after practice. And Eric, depending on his mood, is largely good with this.
You always know the mood when he walks off
and you
the
know
floor.
whether or not, and you might ask a PR person first, can I get Eric for a couple of seconds?
Right.
And even after Eric has delivered this diatribe and message, you get him on the side and you go to him, really? And he goes, well, it's what the guys need right now. Or it's what I have to do. And then in your writing, in your podcasting, in your broadcasting, you can sort of add that nuance to what went on. There is no chance to add nuance. And I'm going to give you another example, and I know we're all over the place because, hey, that's the way I do it, is today when we talk to players starting at 1 o'clock, they can come if they want. This is what I will hate about today. Because, again, this has almost ingrained me as leading a-hole this season. For asking questions in a public forum, I would much rather ask in a private forum. So, Duncan Robinson is going to come out. He's been great this season. He's going to talk about his shooting. He's going to talk about what comes next. He's going to talk about everything. But the question I want to ask, the question most beat writer we want to ask is, how are you going to handle your free agency? What's going to matter more? Money, location, your role, championship chance. Would you give the Heat a hometown discount? That's what I want to ask. But when you ask that in a public forum, you really come off looking as some cold-hearted, SOB who 3 days after, 2 days after the season ended, all you care about is how much money someone's going to make. That's what Zoom has killed. We've got to get back to normalcy.
And you're also not going to get
an answer.
Yes. Because, I mean, you're essentially going to get an answer, I'm going to do what's best for me and my family.
Right.
I mean that is what he's going to say, right?
Or you're going to get an answer of, well, it's not really the money, it's the role I have. And then teams hear that and they go, okay, you're going to start for us. And unlike with the Heat, you're not going to be the third wheel. You're going to be the second wheel because we heard you say that. No one's going to give that away anyway. Today, that's what you want to ask Duncan. That's what you want to ask Kendrick. That's what you want to ask Goran. And this is always awkward because he's such a good guy. I mean, how do you publicly ask someone this question, okay? This is the question I would want to ask Goran on the side. Goran, you were due $19 million next season, but there's a good chance the Heat aren't going to pick that up. Would you be willing to play for a smaller number, perhaps as little as the non-full, mid-level $5.4 million exception? Who else in a public forum goes up to someone saying, hey, how would you feel about a 75% pay cut?
Right.
I mean, we saw what Kenny Mayne did at ESPN when he was offered a 61% pay cut.
Right.
He walked out the door. I don't want to have to ask that publicly, but that's where you get positioned now with the way this is going.
Yeah, and that's what we hope changes next year, but I will be honest, I don't think it's going to change a whole lot. I think even with COVID passing, I think there are going to be, I don't want to give them ideas, but I think there are going to be restrictions.
I think they got comfortable, yeah.
They got comfortable. They like this. I mean, because
and we got to push Jimmy's extension to another segment.
All right, so next we're going to extend the conversation about Jimmy Butler's extension. We will talk about it next on Inside the Paint, sponsored by Pallet Rack City on Onside Radio. OnsideRadio. Ask Jimmy that question today. Jimmy's not coming out today. Talk soon.
You're listening to the Pallet Rack City Inside the Paint Show. For the best racks and warehouse supplies, call Eddie Pieta at 305-424-8547. That's 305-424-8547. Or visit them at 715 West 20th Street in Hialeah. Back with more Inside the Paint at OnsideRadio.com.
There's no need to drive around South Florida wasting valuable time looking for a new or certified pre-owned Acura. Go to the #1 volume sales dealership in the Southeast United States. Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. Purchase with pace and space in a dealership tailored to your needs. From home buying to providing that personal touch. Contact the 2020 Satisfaction Award winner Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. 888-776-5123. That's 888-776-5123. Or visit them at 15601 Pines Boulevard in Pembroke Pines. Inter Miami CF fans, join us at our new home this season for all away games as we broadcast live at Dangerous Minds Brewing Company, 1901 North Federal Highway in Pompano Beach. Join Big O and Alex Dono for the live pregame, halftime, and postgame shows while we watch the games. Enjoy meticulously brewed beer on site, delicious artisanal pizzas, live music, and giveaways. So, the new home for all Inter Miami road games is at Dangerous Minds Brewing Company at the Pompano City Mall, where they'll feature all the Inter Miami games. Follow them on Twitter at Dangerous Minds B and Facebook and Instagram at Dangerous Minds Brewing, and visit them at dangerousmindsbrewing.com.
When you need your warehouse looking good while staying efficient, there's only one place to find the finest racks in the business. Pallet Rack City in Hialeah. 305-424-8547. That's 305-424-8547. Pallet Rack City is the company you need when you want your warehouse sporting the finest racks in the business. After all, who doesn't love a great rack? Pallet Rack City. 305-424-8547. That's 305-424-8547.
Every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., listen to Red Card Radio with Austin Robillard, brought to you by Stout Bar and Grill in Oakland Park. With over 40 TVs, Stout is the home for soccer around the world. Stout Bar features Clonakilty whiskeys, the world's best Irish whiskey.
Keeping you informed in the world of sports. With an OnsideRadio.com sports update.
Happy Memorial Day. Remember what this day is about, remembering and honoring those that gave the ultimate sacrifice so we can enjoy our freedoms we have today. Looking at the sports weekend, the Miami Heat, they were eliminated from the NBA playoffs Saturday after a 120-103 loss to the Milwaukee Bucks. Inter Miami CF didn't fare much better. On the pitch at Drive Pink Stadium in front of a capacity crowd, they lost to DC United 3-0. They're off now until June 19th. That'll be a Saturday. They will travel to play DC United. Kick will be at 8 o'clock. And the Marlins game was postponed yesterday in Boston. They're off today. And we'll head to Toronto's home away from home, Buffalo. Their next game, that will be Tuesday night. You're listening to the only locally owned South Florida sports talk station, OnsideRadio.com.
Welcome back to Inside the Paint, brought to you by Pallet Rack City in Hialeah.
It's local. It's local.
For great racks and warehouse supplies, call them at 305-424-8547. That's 305-424-8547. Back to Inside the Paint. Here's Ira Winderman and Ethan Skolnick.
Hooah!
All right, Ethan Skolnick back on Onside Radio for Inside the Paint. Take you up until 11 o'clock. Sponsored by Pallet Rack City. We have put it off long enough. Let's get to it. I think the Heat probably want to put this off.
$181 million question.
So,
$181 million.
Here's the point that you made about this.
Okay.
Before we get to the specifics of it, here's the point that you made about this that I think is what carries the day here. You mentioned not everybody is worth necessarily what the money is, but it is what you pay, because there's players who are stars, not just superstars, are at a premium, right? Players who can be the face of your franchise or one of the faces of your franchise. The Heat were in position where they had to go basically give Jimmy whatever it is he wanted the last time around, essentially because they had such a bad 2 or 3 years. I mean, the reality is they overpaid, as we know. We can go back through the circumstances. I wasn't against it at the time, but Hassan Whiteside and all these other guys, you talk about a guy who was not worth a max, right? But that's what the going rate was. There were other teams that were willing to pay it, Dallas, Portland, etc.
And the fact is that there is a max makes a major problem because what do you ask for? You ask for the max.
Right.
And if you don't get the max, then you're insulted.
Right.
I mean, so that De'Aaron Fox gets the rookie scale max the same as Jason Tatum, it's kind of ridiculous because Jason Tatum every now and then visits the playoffs.
Right. So that's the issue, but that's the economics you're dealing with. And, of course, the Heat were operating from a position of not of strength at all. I mean, they were at a position where basically Josh Richardson was their best player for a season. Okay, so
where is he gone?
Well, maybe back. Well, probably not. But so they were not dealing from a position of strength, and when they got Jimmy, they were excited because somebody wanted to be here, right? Like that was an issue for a couple of years. Somebody wanted to be here. Pat said it, okay, that we're basically waiting for guys to say they want to be in Miami. This guy wanted to be in Miami. He bought into the quote-unquote culture. This is the danger of the whole culture word when things don't go well. But basically, Jimmy gave them everything they wanted and more until this series. Now, we can talk about extenuating circumstances, not extenuating circumstances, but those are just the facts. Paul George got killed last year for what happened with him. Pascal Siakam got killed last year for what happened with him. Jimmy Butler's numbers were worse than both in this series, okay? But now the moment of truth. Jimmy Butler could potentially make $50 million in the last year of a 4-year extension. Right. What do you do?
Well, it's interesting because you know who I'm going to talk about, but we're not going to mention names because we have our people.
Yeah.
When I was talking about Jimmy Butler's extension, for most of the year, I was saying, okay, they can give him a nice 2-year extension.
Right.
I thought that was the logical length to go to. I thought that was fair, and I thought that would allow them then to morph into Bam Adebayo's team and have space. But again, here's the problem. Because there's a maximum extension, people just point to that number.
Right.
I remember when I first started covering the team way back in the late 80s, and Louis Chaffel was the managing partner there. And he used to say the kind of negotiation he hated was this. He would sit down with an agent and saying, what do you think your player's worth? And the agent would go to him, what do you got? And he'd go, what does it matter what I got?
Right.
What is the value of your player? The problem is with a maximum extension number that is a hard and fast number, every agent just goes, I want that, because that isn't it. There's a hard and fast number. If there was not, and Stan Van Gundy's spoken about this a lot, a salary ceiling, you would have much better distribution of talent around the NBA. Because LeBron James, for $120 million salary cap, might be getting $90 million from one team, and they'd have to build around him. So you have that. So this weekend, I spoke to another agent who has a player on the Heat about Jimmy's extension.
Yeah.
And the other agent goes to me like this. You can't give Jimmy that contract. You can't give him $50 million a year. How are you going to build a team around him?
Right.
And I said to the agent this, that's all well and good, and God bless you for looking out for the best interests of Mickey Arison. What if that was your client?
Right.
Would you not try to get him that?
Right.
Would you not put the teams back against the wall? And so that's the deal. And here's part C of all that, because you've dealt with this also, and you've seen it in Chicago and Minnesota and Philadelphia. And again, I mentioned it in one of the previous segments today. Is there a more frightening thing in the NBA than an unhappy Jimmy Butler?
Right.
Or a Jimmy Butler who feels he's being disrespected?
Right. Well, no. And here's the thing about it. They're going to go for every last dollar. Okay, as you said, as agents would.
And because they're in a position of strength.
Okay, and so if that's the case, then we are having this conversation about this 4th year because, well, really the 3rd and the 4th year, right? Because
of the extension.
Right, because I'm with you. The 2 years, you know what? You rolled the dice on Jimmy, and Jimmy came up, for the most part, it worked, right? So you roll the dice on Jimmy, it worked. 2 more years, okay. I have said repeatedly that I think that this idea of his Tibbs minutes are overstated because he did not have a lot of deep playoff runs. So he doesn't have the kind of LeBron wear, and LeBron's a freak, but he doesn't have that kind of LeBron wear. I don't think that Jimmy flamed out in the playoffs this year, whether we think it's because he wasn't put in position to succeed or whatever. I don't think it's because he was physically beaten down. I think this season may have emotionally beaten him down, mentally beaten him down.
I'm not sure about the back injury the last weekend of the season.
Well,
because you can say you're not hurt, but we've all dealt with back pain, and that stuff can linger for a while.
It can. I mean, you didn't see him like dunk in the playoff series, right? Like the Heat didn't have a dunk for the first.
I didn't see him explosive.
No, so maybe that was some of it, and he's not the type to. I mean, look, his wrist hasn't been right since Philadelphia. Bleep that thing up,
Right.
okay? And he won't talk about it. He's had the ankle issues. He's had some knee issues. So yeah, there's stuff there. But I don't think that was the primary reason, and I don't think that the wear on him is the reason to walk away from the first 2 years. Now, when you start getting into the next 2 years,
can I back you up here for a second? Here's a problem I have, and I know it's sort of being very Pollyannish. Okay. Jimmy Butler still has 2 years left on this contract. We always keep going into the future. You know what I mean?
Right.
He has 2 years left on this contract. Next season, he's going to be paid. He's going to earn next season $26 million.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to have the money. Actually, $26 million, and the year after, he's going to make 36. I'm sorry, $36 million.
Yeah, 36.
Wow, I was wrong. 37 the year after. So you could also make the argument we have $73 million
committed to you.
Why don't we see how it's played out? Why do we have to keep pushing it?
It's not going to happen.
It's just the way the system works.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. And look, I mean, we talked about the BAM extension last week and how that played into where they are now. And the reality was there were practical reasons not to give him the extension. But this is one of those things that if Pat could speak, if it wasn't his player, it's the kind of thing that he would speak about, like at one of his pressers, about how he doesn't like how the league has gone.
Yes, or do your job now. Let's not worry about the future.
But he can't say it publicly
Right.
because it directly affects his most, combustible player.
Sure.
He's not going to be able to say this. The only thing that he can say at a presser is, Jimmy Butler, we love Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler has been everything that we expected, and we're going to do right by Jimmy Butler. There's nothing else that he can say.
And his idea of doing right by Jimmy Butler might be the 2-year extension, not the 4-year extension.
Right, exactly. Or it might be sort of working. And now, they can, just so people understand here, they can do some things to the back end of the contract, though, that are not that are somewhat flexible,
but
right?
If they flatten the money,
yeah.
to some degree also, it is less guaranteed cash.
Right.
It is. It is a smaller contract, no matter how you want to do that. So the question is Jimmy amenable because he's in a place that he loves so much that has, as I'm sure Andy Ellisberg mentioned, no state income tax. So the money lasts longer there anyway. And he will be cast as the leading wingman perimeter player for as long as he's here. Is that what he wants? Because look, let's face it, he was behind other guys in other places and wasn't given that leading man role. So that has something to do with it also. I just don't find Jimmy Butler to be very negotiable on certain points. I think Jimmy Butler, when he gets in his mind, I am a max player, I deserve this extension, I'm done, call me, bring me the paper, and that's it.
Is he Jordan or is he Pippen? He's Pippen, isn't he? And
no, I think on this team he's Jordan just because I think more of the Pippen is Bam Adebayo, who doesn't have to score to do everything else.
Okay, mentality, he's Jordan. I'm with you, okay?
And Kobe.
Right. But I'm just talking about as far as being the leading guy or the second guy. Look, during Dwayne's prime, we were pretty clear. Dwayne was Jordan, right? Now, then Dwayne sort of morphed into Pippen when LeBron got here, right? Okay?
Here, sure.
I guess the question is where Jimmy is, because I don't think anybody's expecting him to be the Jordan at age 35, right? I don't think you're expecting him to be that. I mean, I feel like what's happened with Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook and a couple other guys this year has kind of thrown this whole thing out of whack. Mm-hmm. Because it's like now there's this assumption, but we see what happens. Chris Paul missed time in the playoffs again.
Yes,
okay?
Yes, this could be the same Chris Paul story as
every other year.
He gets to the playoffs and something goes wrong and he has a misstep and he pushes through and he can't make it at the end and he's out in the first.
It's the same, and honestly, it's the same AD story too. Okay, but the reality is the Lakers still have LeBron, so they're able to sort of overcome it potentially.
So here's the deal. I'm going to put you back in a previous role when you actually had to put words on paper that people can cut out and give to people. But you have to write. You're assigned to write a column for the Palm Beach Post, the Fort Lauderdale Sun-Sentinel, the Miami Herald.
Yeah.
And your assignment is this. Ethan, I want you to write whether the Heat should or should not give Jimmy Butler the 4-year, $181 million contract. We want it on the front of the paper tomorrow. So unlike what we've done here,
can we go to break?
Where you can talk in circles
can we go to break?
And go to
break. Got a minute and a half
when you
left?
have to, the hardest part of your career, put something on paper. Seriously. Okay, so
I'm the one who said don't trade the depth of the COVID season. That's on the internet for life.
So which column are you writing? Jimmy Butler wants a 4-year, $181 million extension. The Pat Riley should ... Go.
It ain't my money. So I mean,
seriously, I'm being serious.
I mean, to To me, you try to do what you say he won't do, which is to flatten this thing a little bit, okay? And it's the same thing as you try to do what you did with Bam, which is try to get him to wait. And if they don't, I just don't think this organization right now is in a position of strength. So I think you do it.
Okay, but you do it reluctantly, and you sound like the imbecile sitting across from you who said, "Of course you bring back Deion Waiters and James Johnson. They were
I'm with you,
30-11 over the second half of the season."
I know, but that ain't Deion.
Oh man, but if you just keep chasing mistakes and burying yourself.
But what is the alternative? Okay, so let's get to the alternative of this. The alternative is you tell Jimmy no. He goes into this season.
No, if you tell Jimmy no, you've also surreptitiously, behind the scenes, worked out trade permutations because you realize it would be untenable to have Jimmy Butler almost as a lame duck type of player. We've seen that before. So there's part B.
How many teams in the NBA do you think would give him an extension?
There's always a team, because there was a team that took on John Wall. There was a team that took on Russell Westbrook. These contracts get moved. Someone's going to take on Kevin Love, for example.
Right.
It just does happen. There's always a deal out there. And part B of that is, and you can tell we're really worlds colliding, and we'll deal with the roster in coming weeks.
Yeah, we have many weeks to get to.
Then part B is this. Are you willing, or would you at any time be willing to make Bam Adebayo your leading man?
I think we're 2 years out from that.
Because that's what happens. If you move off Jimmy,
I know.
There's no immediate Jimmy replacement. There's moving in a different direction. And again, folks, we're not saying at all to get rid of Jimmy or anything like that. We're just saying when you're faced with this contract dilemma,
without
you
Jimmy,
have to think
without
of all
Jimmy
the
this year, they're a
possibilities.
lottery team.
Or without Bam, they're a lottery team. So you can go either way on that, right? I mean, it's just,
yeah,
this
probably.
This was a two-man thing that took everything. Okay. They both had very good seasons, even if they weren't all-stars.
I'm not disrespecting Bam's season. It's a little bit colored by fans around me screaming for him to shoot in games 3 and 4. I'm not. Bam had a better season than he had in his All-Star season, statistically and in all other ways. Okay, until it came crashing down. But they couldn't win with just Bam this year. They did win with when Jimmy played.
Correct.
Okay, so I think that is the one difference. I think what we're going to do here in the last segment, because some Heat players talked today, we're going to do a rapid fire, okay?
With more analysis in coming weeks. Yes.
Correct. More of a tease. We'll be back on OnSideRadio.com. Inside the Paint, Pallet Rack City is the sponsor.
For the best racks and warehouse supplies, call Eddie Pieta at 305-424-8547. That's 305-424-8547. Or visit them at 715 West 20th Street in Hialeah. Back with more Inside the Paint at OnSideRadio.com. When you need your warehouse looking good while staying efficient, there's only one place to find the finest racks in the business. Pallet Rack City in Hialeah. 305-424-8547. That's 305-424-8547. Pallet Rack City is the company you need when you want your warehouse sporting the finest racks in the business. After all, who doesn't love a great rack? Pallet Rack City. 305-424-8547. That's 305-424-8547.
When you're looking for curtains and blinds to create a space of your own, look no further than Bandalux. Bandalux can tailor your space to your needs. Create the atmosphere and ambiance you desire. We invite you to discover it at Bandalux.com. Explore our new solar control systems, range of sustainable fabrics, and energy-efficient solutions that can improve your well-being and quality of life. Witness Bandalux Beauty. Go to Bandalux.com or follow them on Instagram at Bandalux_official. For a personal experience, a shade above Window Fashions in Davie and Sunrise is an official Bandalux partner.
Hey, it's Toast. Last year when I had PGT custom windows and doors installed in my house by B&T Windows and Doors, I knew about the hurricane protection. What I didn't know? The silence. Oh my goodness, my house is so quiet now. One of those cars goes tearing down the street with the crazy loud muffler. Yeah, I don't hear it anymore. It's unbelievable. I didn't realize how noisy my house was beforehand. You've got to get PGT custom windows and doors installed in your pad today. Call B&T Windows and Doors, 954-233-0126. That's 954-233-0126.
Hey, it's Big O for EJD Construction, your custom home builder, additions and home remodeling. Our lives have changed. We're making our homes more of an oasis. Call the right place. Call the right people. Eric at EJD Construction for over 16 years. A-rated member of Angie's List in the Better Business Bureau. 305-433-4843. That's 305-433-4843 for EJDConstruction.com.
When you're looking to add that extra style and protection for your home or business, visit A Shade Above Window Fashions in Davie or Sunrise, where plantation shutters are a major part of our business, and they look great in any home. We have them in white, stained colors, and wood tones. We can even motorize your shutters like the one in the OnSideRadio.com studio. A Shade Above Window Fashions, 954-434-4774. That's 954-434-4774. Love the space you live in. A Shade Above Window Fashions.
BYB Extreme Fighting presents BYB 6, Friday, July 16th at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood. 10 bare-knuckle brawls in BYB's patented triangle ring, the Trigon. The smallest and most confrontational ring in combat sports. Catch Renee, Hialeah Champ Rodriguez against Mad MF Delanois, Christine Knuckles Stanley, and many more bare-knuckle brawlers. Meet Donna 5000, commentators Mike Goldie Goldberg and Paulie Malignaggi. Friday, July 16th at Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino. BYB 6. Welcome back to Inside the Paint, brought to you by Pallet Rack City in Hialeah.
It's local. It's local.
For great racks and warehouse supplies, call them at 305-424-8547. That's 305-424-8547. Back to Inside the Paint. Here's Ira Winderman and Ethan Skolnick.
Hooah! All right, Ethan Skolnick back on Inside the Paint. We're going to do this thing fast, sponsored by Pallet Rack City, OnSideRadio.com. Let's go through this, okay? Give me one sentence on each. What needs to happen for this guy this offseason? Single most important thing. Tyler Hero.
Become more consistent, appreciate the professionalism required.
Get in the gym. It's got to do that. Trevor Ariza.
Agree to come back at a minimum, understand there might not be a full-time role.
Andre Iguodala.
Thank you to the Heat. If you need to use my $15 million in a trade, I appreciate it. If not, you can see me in Warriors colors next season.
Dwayne Dedman.
Heat try to find any way to keep that energy, because when you give your all in a playoff series, you deserve more.
Kendrick Nunn.
Heat try to use the asset in a sign and trade, recognizing the price point is above their means and needs.
Precious Achiuwa.
Summer League.
KZ Okpala.
Summer League.
Max Strus.
Find the best possible two-way player. The rules change back to the usual next season. Probably need more of a developmental prospect than Max Strus.
Bam Adebayo.
I say you go to Chris Bosh camp and you shoot 1,000 3-pointers every day starting now.
Duncan Robinson.
Try to find an amenable point in free agency, making Robinson realize that he'll never be as featured or as comfortable as he is and was with the Heat.
Goran Dragic.
Find a price point, probably a quarter of what his $19 million team option is. See if it's workable. Let him know if he continues to produce, he'll get paid on the back end down the road.
Jimmy Butler.
Reluctantly take the pen, sign the extension, lock yourself in, and ride the Jimmy wave.
Did I mention KZ Okpala? I did not.
I know you did. I said Summer League.
So who am I missing? Who's left? God, they didn't play many guys down the stretch of this season, did they? Is that it?
Well, let's see.
No, Kelly's not here anymore. Kelly, come back to Miami. Who else we got? Gabe Vince. I don't know. Gabe Vince
is an incredible story. 3-point specialist who became a defensive specialist.
Maybe
start making your 3-pointers again. I just think that's going to be critical there. Yeah.
Oh, Victor Oladipo.
He has to be willing to take a small deal and that he keep his bird rights. And if he makes it work, they take care of him down the road, because Pat Riley's been very good, very candid, and very honest about that.
Throwing a curveball at you. Kyle Lowry.
Has to be willing to only take 2 years and has to really want to be with the Heat. But with Jimmy Butler, the answer probably is yes.
DeMar DeRozan.
Too mid-rangey for a team that lacks enough 3-point shooting.
Eric Spoelstra.
Decompress, come back, be open to change, maybe add one more veteran, reliable voice to the coaching staff. You have the vacancy.
Pat Riley.
be not as committed to running things back and understand there are 2 or 3 main things are the main things, and everyone else, if they have to be, is expendable, movable, replaceable.
All right, we have enough time to do a full episode on all of those people, including Max Strus. All right, we'll be back next week on Monday, OnsideRadio.com, Inside the Paint, sponsored by Pallet Rack City. We appreciate the support, the sponsorship. Follow Ira at Ira Heatbeat, me at Ethan J. Skolnick, and at 5 Reasons Sports. Into the offseason.
If you're looking